Hi everyone, I'm here to talk to you today about the second half of August and the new moon that we have in Virgo on the 23rd. And I just want to say a very warm welcome to any new viewers, new subscribers to this channel. I offer a lot of variety of different videos, and so I hope you find something that will inspire you and encourage you in these very big times of transition. So let's talk about August, because August is the month of all of the months of this year. August is the month where this very unique configuration that I've talked a great deal about in recent months, and I'll put the big picture video below if you're not aware of that, this trine between Pluto and Uranus, and at the exact midpoint we have the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune at 0 of Aries. That's what I'm talking about. This becomes most exact this year during August. It's not completely exact. It will become most exact next July 18th, in fact, but it's the closest we get. So it's we're going to get a glimpse of what next year, particularly around the middle of the year, may hold for us. And so there are 2 days in August where 2 sextiles become exact, and the first is on the 12th of August. And this is where we have the second sextile between Saturn and Uranus. Now, we had the first sextile in April of this year. This is the second sextile, and we have a third coming up in January. And and by then they will be in their earlier signs of Taurus and Pisces. But that will be the kind of completion of this series of 3 sextiles. Now, a sextile is an aspect, it's a 60-degree aspect of opportunity. But the seed point for this Saturn-Uranus conjunction was in 1988, and it was still operational in 1989. It has a 45-year cycle of conjunction back to conjunction. And the symbolism of this is really the old and the new. The old and the new. Saturn being the old, the traditional, what we've always known, and Uranus being the new, the breakthrough, the revolutionary. And so this conjunction was in place in 1989 at exactly the same time that we had the exactly the same time as we had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. And I've talked about this before because in November 89 we saw the collapse of the Berlin Wall. And I was in Berlin at the time, I've mentioned this before, and literally young people, Uranus, youth, were clambering all over the wall and taking it down with hammers and pickaxes. It was just the most incredible demonstration, literal demonstration of the collapse of the old. In Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, walls, borders, boundaries. I mean, it couldn't have been more literal. And so the Saturn-Uranus conjunction in 1988, that was still operational in 1989, was another echo of the old versus the new, with the new very much winning at this time. So they have now come into this sextile. There are 1 degree of Aries for Saturn, 1 degree of Gemini for Uranus, getting on to one degree. And so we have another opportunity to move from the old into the new. So this is reinforcing a lot of the much bigger themes that I'm talking about at the moment. Also remember that on the 11th and 12th of August, we have this beautiful, very beneficial conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. And they are known as the 2 benefics, the lesser benefic and the greater benefic. And so see where 14 degrees of Cancer falls in your chart, because in that house area, you may well suddenly get some recognition or good luck or abundance or a lot of love or social activity, whatever it is. It expresses in a loving and expansive way. And also because it's conjunct our fixed star, our spiritual star Sirius, there could be a spiritual kind of sense of abundance with this as well. That's 11th and 12th of August. This sextile between Saturn and Uranus happens on the 12th. And as I say, there will be a third sextile in January, the completion. So look for opportunities of the new that are coming in for you. It's this balance between the old and the new. Look for opportunities. And I've talked about this a great deal in terms of this is our rehearsal time in these summer months in the Northern Hemisphere. And then we'll go into the later months of the year as the planets, the outer planets, regress or retrograde back into their previous signs. We go through a period of integration, reevaluation. But see what excites you, what new passions, what new interests, what new messages are coming up now. Because all of the outer planets are currently in their new signs, and this Saturn-Uranus sextile is echoing or reinforcing what I'm saying about rehearsal. Taster sessions. Where do you feel electrified? Where do you feel excited? Even if those areas of life are very different from anything you've known before. This is your opportunity because we are really step changing into a new you and a new reality, as I've talked at great length. On the 28th of the month, we also have an exact sextile between Uranus and Neptune. Now, this is a 171-year cycle from conjunction to conjunction. And the conjunction, the seed point of Uranus-Neptune was in 1993. And this was really the beginning of the World Wide Web, the internet. Tim Berners-Lee had actually invented it in 1989 when we had the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, but it really started to take off in the 1990s. And, you know, it's literally technology made viral. Technology, Uranus goes viral, Neptune. And people who were born in the 1990s around that Uranus-Neptune conjunction are now in their 30s, 30-something. And they are now stepping into potential leadership or influence in the world. They have very different views about the world versus their previous generation. And they are a very technological generation. They're also very spiritual, Neptune, many of them. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they bring forward, having grown up with the World Wide Web, having grown up with the internet and that technology, what they're going to do with that, and also what they're going to develop with their own sense of spirituality. So it's a really interesting time, particularly for that age group. Okay, the other thing that is happening in the second half of August is already Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto are moving retrograde. They haven't re-entered their previous signs yet, although Saturn does that on the 1st of September, retrogrades back into Pisces. Then on the 22nd of October, Neptune retrogrades back into Pisces, and then the 8th of November, it is Uranus that re-enters Taurus. But three of them at least at the moment are in retrograde motion. So we're already starting to enter this reassessment phase. So what's grabbing us, what's exciting us, what's new, what's different, but also we're starting to reassess at the same time. So really be aware, be on your eagle's perch of that bigger picture of things that feel so different for your life. I mean, as I mentioned I think it was in the conversation with Nancy Rebecca, it could be, it could be healing that you've never explored before. It could be animal communication. It could be painting. It could be archaeology. It could be sacred science. It could be, anything where you feel drawn. So be open. They're all glimpses of the new you. And be really aware of your choices. Make them very conscious. Be aware of your thoughts in a bigger way than you've ever been in your lifetime. And somebody recently gave me some really excellent advice on this. She said, choose a word can be, and you can go up to about 3 words, a phrase of about 3 words. You can choose love or joy or laughter or abundance or compassion or creativity. I actually chose fun and freedom. Fun and freedom. And obviously, if you're going through a very hard time emotionally, if you're diving deep into your own process, if you're grieving, if there's been a bereavement close to you, anything like that, we can't use this for spiritual bypassing. We have to really honor those deep emotions and feel them and go through them. So what I'm talking about here is a more general day-to-day practice. If life is kind of okay, it's a more day-to-day practice. And so the piece of advice this wonderful lady gave me was, every time you say something negative, or you even think something negative, you use your word. Or for me, it's fun and freedom. And that acts like a delete key to what you've just thought or said. Now, I don't have many negative words, I don't think, that I speak out loud, but I was quite surprised. As a pretty positive person, I had quite a few negative thoughts that are, just rolling around you. And this is very relevant to Virgo. It's your day-to-day. It's ruled by Mercury. It's your day-to-day thinking. It's also relevant to Gemini as well. So catch yourself and use your delete word. Laughter, abundance, joy. Particularly abundance if you feel any sense of poverty or scarcity. I'm going to use fun and freedom, because often my work is quite serious and earnest, and I think I need some more fun and freedom. So that's my delete key. And really be quite conscious of you, because it's actually really fun to do that. And catch yourself, that inner self-talk, that grunge that runs on in the background that generally we're not very aware of. So that's a very simple, free recommendation to you that I've really enjoyed, actually. I'm going to talk in a moment and show you the chart of the new moon. This new moon is happening at 023 of Virgo, and it's happening on the 23rd of August. And indeed, in August and September, we actually have 2 new moons in Virgo. We've got this one on the 23rd of August, and then on the 21st of September, it's actually a solar eclipse, which is a big new moon at 29 degrees of Virgo. So we have 2. So there could well be a link between this new moon on the 23rd of August and what starts to unfold at that bigger new moon, because it's a solar eclipse, on the 21st. That's a very significant solar eclipse on the 21st of September. I'll be talking about that in later updates. So see where this new beginning, this new seed of 023 of Virgo falls in your chart, and don't forget to set a new intention. And for me now, every time I set a new intention for myself, I also set it for all and for the earth. Always, always, not just for me, but for all and for the earth. So it's for the betterment of all. Now, Virgo is to do with your daily routine. And as I said just a moment ago, it's ruled by Mercury. So it's very linked to your day-to-day thinking as well. And that's why that piece of advice I've given you can be so helpful. Virgo energy likes to get everything categorized and organized and running like clockwork. So if you need, a cleansing of your house, a good feng shui, it's great to get somebody with a lot of Virgo energy. They are very drawn to health, particularly gut health, nutrition, that kind of thing. And they're a sign that loves to be of practical service to others. What can I do to help you? Can I make soup? It's the classic thing with it. Can I make soup? What can I do to help your day? But I also mean this in a much bigger way, because the instinct with Virgo is always, how can I help you? It's service to others. And I think one of the key ingredients in which timeline we are choosing. And I think for me, broadly, there are two collective timelines. They're really three, but really, to keep it simple, they're two. One of the key determinants of which timeline you're going to be on, and they're temporary timelines, which I'll explain in a moment as well, is, are you principally service to self, or are you principally service to others? In whatever way, it could literally be every week you help a neighbour with her shopping. You smile at strangers. You help people across the road. It can be that small and apparently insignificant an offering that still is putting positive weights in the service to other side of the scale. Now, people have been asking me about this recently. How can I talk about a bifurcation when I'm also talking about unity consciousness? So the best analogy I can give you, and I think it really works quite well, is imagine that you're at an airport and you've either chosen fast track or slow track. You all of you ultimately get on the unity consciousness plane. But some people have chosen a route that is going to take longer, it's slower than others who are on fast track. And generally, I think of faster track as the more natural and organic timeline in general. But ultimately, as I say, we're all going to achieve unity consciousness. But I also think it is undeniable at the moment that we are in a bifurcation of energy. There are either people who are living principally in fear or people who are living in love, broadly. I think that's undeniable. So I hope that helps to clarify where I'm at. So let us start to look at this chart now, because there's quite a lot to say about this. Okay, so this is on the 23rd. And here we have our new moon always together, sun and moon together at 023 of Virgo. So Virgo is very related to health, as I've just been explaining, very related to health. And it's very interesting that it is linked here to Neptune. Now, I've talked in the past how Neptune is related to blood, to the immune system, whereas Virgo is more getting the whole body system running like clockwork, the gut, the microbiome, nutrition, etc. But they are both linked to health. And it's interesting also, I think, at this time, I haven't put Nessus in here, the Centaur Nessus, but Nessus is actually conjunct the North Node. Nessus is at 20 degrees of Pisces, and Nessus, as you will probably remember from early videos where I've described the mythology, Nessus is related to the blood and to poisoning and to gaslighting and all of that kind of thing. I'll try and find a link to the myth of Nessus to put below for those of you who aren't familiar. So we could see things coming up about health here, because this isn't just a kind of normal Virgo new moon, which can often be quite modest and humble. This is really tightly square Uranus. So that puts a whole different flavour on it, because Uranus brings in this quality of electrification and sudden radical shocks and disruptions and events. This can be linked to cyber attacks, power outages. It's linked to aviation, disruption in aviation, that kind of thing. It's linked to truth. It's linked to awakening. We could see a lot of truth coming out at this time. I think very recently a lot of truth has come out that you may be aware of. Much more to come. Truth related to health issues. It can also be more digitization coming in, robotics, which of course will change daily work routines. Virgo, very much to do with employment and daily work routines. Now, it's related to truth, it's related to clarity. And so what this does is give us the opportunity to revolutionize our daily routine. Now, that may well be because your employment changes, robotics are taking over in your workplace, and that's leaving you more time to follow your individual path. But this will also revolutionize in a bigger way social structures, which is what, of course, Pluto in Aquarius is doing. Big time, big time, big time, until 2044. And so, yes, for sure, there could be all kinds of radical shocks, truths, awakenings coming to light. And I think from this point on, the next few months of the year are going to be extraordinary in terms of awakening, because the consciousness is rising so quickly, the energy, the light, all of these are ingredients for our evolution. And of course, Uranus is now literally very, half a degree really, conjunct Sedna. And this is about discoveries in the deep seas. And I think it was really right at the beginning of the year, I was talking about Sedna, thinking of Sedna's myth, that she, when her father chopped her fingers off and she couldn't get back in the kayak, she floated down to the deep Arctic and she transmuted into a sea goddess, and her fingers became these beautiful new sea creatures of turtles and whales and dolphins, very high dimensional. I felt that we would start to make many new discoveries in the deep seas and oceans, and new discoveries about new life. This is about metamorphosis that I've talked so much about. Just a few days ago, and I'll put the link for the article below, I read about a Chinese-led research team, and they went more than 9 kilometers down in the Pacific, I believe, where there's no sunlight can penetrate, it's too deep. And they are discovering all kinds of new forms of life, which actually feed off the bacteria coming up from the ocean floor. New forms of life we were completely unaware of, new discoveries, Uranus in the deep seas, Sedna. I mean, it's so literal, looking at the symbolism. So what I love, one of the many, many, many things I love about astrology is if you trust the mythology, you trust the symbolism, wait for it to start to manifest in the coming months. So I think that's a great example. This is just the beginning. We're going to see so many more discoveries in our deep seas of ancient civilizations and temples and new life forms and all kinds of things. But I think also there's a malleability at this new moon. I mean, we have Sun Moon in a malleable sign, a mutable sign of Virgo. We have Uranus Sedna in another mutable sign of Gemini. And there's a sense, and Dr. David Clements talks about this a lot, of malleability, of our reality becoming much more fluid, less dense, less set. And this is actually very exciting, I think. And this is also going to give us a lot of new discoveries in our neural networks, as I've talked about before. And, don't forget that Homer is part of this picture, because Uranus and Sedna, and I've mentioned this before, is in a quincunx, 150 degree aspect to Homer. And Homer is here in a sextile to the new moon. And therefore, by the way, this new moon is yet again bringing in 2 planets to between 0 and 2 degrees of its sign, which in this case is Virgo. So here, if you count around the circle, we have, I think, 8 orbiting bodies between 0 and 2 degrees of their signs. We have Homer, 1, Pluto, 2, Saturn, Neptune, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, 8 orbiting bodies between 0 and 2 degrees of their sign. You want a new beginning? So much evidence for new beginnings. So, Homer sextile this new moon, and Homer 150 degrees quincunx Sedna. And again, I've talked about this Yod, this finger of fate, this finger of God in previous videos, because Saturn, Neptune is part of this sextile, which forms the base for this finger of God, finger of fate, which these have a sense of destiny. So what all this is saying is, I think we are going to develop, I think of Virgo also as ancient wisdom, shamanic knowledge, that kind of thing. Homer in her mythology was, shamanic wisdom and knowledge was very much part of her myth, how she could, with her magic stick, the Macaulay, she could summon wild food from the land, even when it had been laid waste. She could summon wild food from the seas, even though it had been so polluted. There was a magical quantum transformation. And I truly think it's not going to take years and years and years of slog to clean up the mess we've made on the earth and the seas. I truly think, that plastic they've discovered that thrives on microplastics in the sea, and another one that thrives in microplastic in rubbish dumps on the land. I mean, we're going to be making some quantum leaps in clearing up the earth, but I do think from this point on, and I feel it in the zeitgeist already, there is much greater sensitivity to loving the earth, loving her back into a good state. And also, I think our building going forwards, I'm thinking here of GeoShip. I'll put the link for the website below. I mean, they have no idea I'm mentioning them. GeoShip is a kind of dome of an eco house, and it's made out of ceramic material. I understand that's very close to bone, and it's very sympathetic, very much in harmony with the earth. And they actually turn like a sunflower through the day to always be looking at the sun. And built on eco principles, and it's really beautiful, very inspired building. This is the kind of residence that we may be moving to in the future, that's very, very in tune with the earth. I'll put that link for GeoShip below. But also, increasingly, I've mentioned that once Homer moved into Scorpio, which is the other sign, Virgo is linked to medicine, Scorpio is the other sign linked to medicine. And I felt it was very linked to stem cell medicine, because that entered Scorpio at exactly the time I had that blood plasma injection with my own blood into my knee. That was my own stem cells. Stem cells are going to become very big as part of medicine going forwards. With the sting in the tail of Scorpio, there's a sense of that injectability. But I'm also starting to feel, remember Homer and her mythology could regenerate herself from an old crone to a young maiden, that part of her mythology. Kelly Kolodny, in our recent conversation, which is on my channel, when she was channeling Archangel Raphael mentioned that the light, the high frequency light that we're moving through, is repairing the telomeres, which are those kind of, they're like plastic tips at the end of shoelaces that are part of our DNA, and with age and time, they become quite frayed and tatty. And so the replication of our cell function becomes a poorer and poorer version, which is why our cells degenerate and, old age, etc., and our faculties fail. However, Archangel Raphael was talking about those being repaired by the light coming in now, the high frequency light, which suggests longer living with greater vitality and much healthier cell replication, so that we maybe age more slowly or even potentially reverse our age. This is something I'm going to be talking to Dr. David Clements about very soon, and get his view and his team's view of that. That's the symbolism and mythology of Homer. So, you just sit with the symbolism and mythology and wait for it to manifest. So it's another example. So I also think it's terribly interesting that not only have we got this finger of fate, finger of God, I've talked about in several previous videos, we also have yet another one being formed by this new moon. With here, Saturn, Neptune, sextile to Pluto as the base, and the new moon being at the pointy end of this skinny triangle, which is the finger of God, finger of fate. There's always a sense of destiny with this. So a sense of destiny with something to do with the earth, or with medicine, or to do with our bodies. We'll wait and see how that forms. But here, of course, another expression of Uranus being so tightly square Sun and Moon is more seismic activity. Now, we sort of anticipated this in late July, and indeed we had the biggest earthquake that we have had for 14 years since Fukushima. We had the 8.8 magnitude earthquake in Russia. Luckily, it was away from any dense population area, but it was the biggest one we've had since Fukushima, since March 2011. Now, in my Japan video, I did an analysis, and in fact, there was a tsunami warning as a result of that Russian earthquake for Japan, and people were evacuated from Japan, but as I understand, there were no casualties, and it didn't hit Japan hard, which is great. But when I did an analysis, astrological analysis of Fukushima, what was absolutely incredible to me was Uranus, the planet of earthquakes and seismic activity, was at the last whisper of Pisces it's already on the world axis, about to go into Aries, and of course there was a fire in the nuclear reactor. And Neptune, planet of tsunamis, was at 29 degrees of Aquarius, linked to earthquakes. So we had the massive earthquake, the 9.1 in March 2011, and because of the nuclear meltdown, we also had, and then we had the tsunami warning. And sadly, there were many fatalities. So Uranus and Neptune, earthquakes and tsunamis, were both at their anoretic degree, their crisis degree of their signs. Uranus already on the world point, the Aries point, and they were also in mutual reception because Neptune was in the sign that Uranus rules and Uranus was in the sign that Neptune rules. So that made it even stronger, like a conjunction. Hope you're following me here. Okay, they were both directly, exactly aspecting the ascendant of Japan in that chart, the identity of Japan. I'll put the video I did for Japan beneath this video. So, more seismic activity could potentially come forth. There's a heck of a lot of, since that 8.8 earthquake, there's been a huge amount of volcanic activity. If you follow the website of volcanodiscovery.com, I think that's the easiest one to follow. Also, USGS is a good site as well, but you can follow, and they're very up to date. A massive amount of volcanic activity. I mean, two of the huger volcanoes in Russia that haven't been disturbed, I think, for hundreds of years, are now being activated and are becoming live. Certainly in Hawaii, in Italy. I mean, it's just right across the globe. We are seeing more volcanic activity. Mount Rainier in America. So around this new moon in Virgo, because there tends to be more seismic activity around new moons, but actually particularly full moons and supermoons, but nevertheless there's a slight uptick at new moons as well, we could see more seismic activity. So we will have to wait and see what unfolds for that. Also, other things I want to mention, we have Mars here square to Jupiter. We have a kind of fighting for causes coming in. There's a kind of crusading element here. And I think this is going to be around peace. The world wants peace. We are so tired of war. 99% of the world's population are tired of war. We want peace. So there could be a kind of crusade for that. And I know, many people feel so strongly about it. Demand for greater equanimity, a greater self-care, Cancer, social care, and most certainly peace in the world. And there's a very tight square here between Venus and Chiron, using love to heal. That's very literal, using love to heal the wounds. Now, already we are into eclipse energy, because September is a very big month. I think I can stop sharing here, actually. Yes, those are the main things I want to say, because the other very important things in the chart I've covered in great detail in previous videos. So September is very powerful because we have 2 eclipses on the 7th and the 21st. We also have the equinox. We have the Libra equinox. And also on the 6th of September, and we'll feel it right from the start of the month, Uranus moves stationary retrograde. And so several days to either side of that, and of course that's running right up into that total lunar eclipse on the 7th, we will feel greater magnification of that Uranus energy. So all of the things I've talked about, cyber attacks, power outages, greater seismic activity, greater truth, greater awakening, all of those things will be writ large potentially in that first half of September. Also, what happens on the very end of August, I believe it's the 29th of August, Pluto moves out of bounds beyond the normal 23 degrees north or south of the ecliptic, that ecliptic band in which planets normally orbit. But occasionally they go what's called out of bounds, and that's when they act in a more extreme way. And if you're born with an out of bounds planet, say it's your Mercury or your Uranus, that can give you absolute genius because you think beyond the normal bounds. If it's Mars, you may be a great athlete because you break records, you go beyond the normal bounds. So it can be incredibly positive, but it gives a kind of, Mercury, Uranus will give a kind of genius aspect, Mars will be greater physicality. See which one it is. So in this case, it's going to be Pluto. And it is going to stay out of bounds until November the 9th. And in fact, I think it really starts to move out of bounds. It's in a kind of boundary area until about the early September, and then, fully out of bounds until the 9th of November. Now, I had a conversation with the very gifted American astrologer, Rosie Finn, some months ago, and I'll put the link for that video below, because this wonderful lady has done she's gone back to 1800 BC in her research, pretty much 4,000 years in her research, looking at what happened when Pluto moved out of bounds, to the north or to the south. Now, she discovered that when it moves to the north out of bounds, those are times of great tyranny, autocracy, totalitarianism. When it moves out of bounds to the south, those are times when power shifts to the people, which of course is echoing Pluto in Aquarius, as I've talked about, revolution, awakening, shattering of scientific paradigms. Again, that's very much Pluto in Aquarius. Non-violent demonstrations as well, but a real big sense of awakening. For the next 10 years, and look at Rosie's work because it's extraordinary, for the next 10 years, from 2025 to 2035, in the last few months of the year, it's principally September to December each year, Pluto will move out of bounds. This is the last time for this next decade it will be out of bounds to the south for thousands of years. Again, this is another incredibly rare convergence, I would want to call it, ingredient into these incredibly rare and even unique happenings at this time that is shifting the power to the people. Now, again, as I've always said, it's not going to be handed to us on a plate, but it increases the revolutionary impulse that doesn't have to be boots on the street. You know, people waving placards. It can be a revolution of love, a revolution of choice. I'm going to become self-employed. I'm going to opt out. I'm going to, disengage as far as I can from the system. This is beginning now. On top of everything else, all the other astrological configurations and alignments I've been talking about for months and months and months. So this can revolutionize our day-to-day life. We also had this, I believe, and Rosie talks about it, during the American and French revolutions, which again were times when the power shifted to the people. So incredible research. I mean, vast and very particular detailed research that she's done. It's taken her many, many years. So take a look at that. And again, as I say, it adds to this picture. I find this incredibly exciting because everywhere I look and every person I talk to is talking about, well, this is a very unusual period in, humanity's history. So know that we are in these incredibly accelerated evolutionary times and really see, without pinpointing a specific date, the accelerated, concentrated period of evolution I do see as 2025 to 2027. That's what I chose for the big picture. And whether it's this year or next or 2027, Richard Ryder has always said it's 2027 for the dragonfly to fully emerge from the water nymph. And that was channeled by Ra, who was the impetus for gene keys. He was looking at 17,000 year cycles. And, Richard Rudd is very much following that and saying it's 2027. I'm feeling that the astrology is more exact in 2026, but it doesn't really matter. What matters, and we're going to move up in consciousness in waves, it's not going to happen for everybody on the same day. But what's important is we are in process. We are in process of this accelerated period in human evolution, which is unique and extraordinary. That's the good news. That's the really good news. Are there going to be lumpy bits, rocky times as the old system collapses and we have more big earth changes? Yes, absolutely. But know that has to happen, and we have to see that collapse. We have to see the demolition of the house on the site on which we're going to build the new house, which is going to be so different. So I hope that's helped you. And do remember in these extraordinary times that the light is the game changer and love is the checkmate. And the more you can stay in love as a state of being, not just as a romantic love, but as a state of being, beaming out love to people you pass in the street, in a shop, beaming out love to the trees, the birds, the animals, beaming out love as a state of being, the more we are igniting that web of light that is becoming brighter by the day around our earth. And people who are doing the daily evening meditations with me, you don't have to join every time, but they are reporting over and over again that the web of light is getting bigger and brighter in every moment. God bless. Hope that's helped you. Have a wonderful new moon in Virgo, and I'll be back very soon with a lot of big astrology for September. Bye for now.